Hello people of the internet, I'm the man with a plan. And yesterday in 10 Days of Pixelness I reviewed Altered Beast with the Sega Mega Drive, which is actually a pretty good game, but hey, I'll avoid talking about that one for now. I'm just gonna select the games from this box here. Just see what we're gonna be doing. This actually feels quite big. Holy shit, it's a console. Yeah, there's a few games for it. This is a Sega Game Gear. I'll just hold it up so you can see it. Here we go. Okay. So, what is a Sega Game Gear? Well, that's a bit of a history lesson. The Sega Game Gear was released in October of 1990 in Japan, but was released to the rest of the world in April of 1991 to tackle the Game Boy, Nintendo's already popular and very successful handheld console. But the Game Gear took in a few advantages that the Game Boy did not have. First of all, there was a color screen. Second of all, there was backlighting. What this meant was that you could see the Game Gear even if the room you were in was completely dark. But there were a few disadvantages to the Game Gear over the Game Boy. First of all, well, look at it. It's not even portable. It's a fucking joke. It barely fits in my pocket. On a more serious note, the battery life is what killed off the Game Gear. The Game Gear took 6 AA batteries and drained them all in about 2 to 3 hours. The Game Boy, on the other hand, took in 4 AA batteries and took 14 to 16 hours to drain them all. This is ultimately what meant the Game Gear was going to finish second place, but hey, is it really that bad of a console? Let's find out. The games came on these little cartridges here, so I'm just going to show you some. Here we go. Yeah, so the games came on these little cartridges here. They were pretty big. I mean, they were as big as a Game Boy screen, but hey, let's see what they're like. And as you can see, they slot in the back here. Pretty similar to most consoles nowadays that are portable. But anyway, let's just see what they're like. The Sega Game Gear, well, when it came to games, it was actually fairly solid. I mean, there weren't the original games that you had to buy a Game Boy to play, but there were games on the Game Gear that simply couldn't be done on a Game Boy. Sega of course gave it its full first-party support with games like Sonic the Hedgehog, Shinobi, and Columns, and another load I neglect to mention, such as Ristar and Thunder Force. The really strange thing is that when I mention most of these games, you'll probably recognize that they're on other consoles. And that's something the Game Gear did really well. It took console games and just essentially put them in your hand, which is the aim of a portable gaming system when you think about it. So, the Game Gear is scoring a lot of points here. Of course, though, it did have its drawbacks when it came to battery life and stuff. But, I don't know, I don't think third-party developers cared, because a lot of third-party games came out on the Game Gear. Midway were developing their arcade games, Mortal Kombat 2, take a look at how well it's running. And NBA Jam, which is one of my favorites. I mean, this one kinda does suck graphically, but, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. There's also Joe Montana Football, a sports game, and this is really, really good. Another game that was actually on the Mega Drive. There are, of course, some original Game Gear games, such as Sonic Chaos, but they're few and far between. They're mostly good, but I like to stick to these ones. There are some good licensed games there too. Aside from the sports games I just mentioned, there was Castle of Illusion, which was also, guess what, on the Mega Drive. This game was actually pretty good too, despite it being a Disney game. Oh well, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. The Game Gear did do moderately well with these games, and people still remember them. They're relatively cheap today, and while Game Gears can be a bit expensive, somewhere between 60 and 100 euros each, the games are pretty cheap and they're worth playing. So, if you were to get your hands on one of these Game Gears, I would recommend playing some of these games, and maybe even more that I haven't mentioned. You can go online and check them out. But other than that, it's a pretty solid 8 out of 10 in the Game Gear library. In the end, the Game Gear did moderately well. It sold around 10 million units worldwide. And, you know, it's actually a pretty good console. It had some really serious games for it. It might not have been as good as the Game Boy, sure, I mean, there's no disputing that, but hey, it doesn't mean it's not a good console. There's a few solid games on here, a few solid ports, and the hardware really lives up to the expectations. All around, it's an okay console, only weighed down by the battery life and the fact that it's not really a portable console at all. I've been the man with a plan. Thank you for watching my video. If you like this video and you'd like to see more like it, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Like this video, leave a comment, and I will see you tomorrow.